this evening. And yes, I want to welcome everyone here this evening and thank you so very much for being with us at another virtual meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. This evening, we'll have a very interesting discussion, which will be led by DP Stewart, our Jamaicans really over the monarchy. And we have some good members of the panel that will also share their insight as to why this is so and give their views. At this time, I will call on President Designate Junior to do the welcome and roll call of clubs.
Very good evening, President Paul. Are you all hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing it clearly. Okay.
And welcome to all our Kiwanians and guests online with us tonight. As President Paul has said, tonight we're having a very interesting discussion. Very timely discussion as well. Our Jamaicans really over the monarchy. I know and I do hope that we'll all enjoy it. But just before, we are going to be asking respective clubs to bring greetings. Very quickly though. And we'll start with those Kiwanian and clubs outside of Jamaica. Any Kiwanian outside of Jamaica that would like to bring greetings at this time?
Yeah, good evening, President Paul and members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. This is President-elect Letna, bringing greetings on behalf of President Sharon and the members of Kiwanis Club of Toronto Caribbean. I'm looking for a very pleasant meeting and one with great conversation about this matter, which I am really thinking about hard. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming too. And incidentally, I'm in Toronto as well at this time. So, you know, I'm in your place. Any other clubs from outside of Jamaica? Any other clubs outside of Jamaica? Then we start with Division 25. Club in Division 25 that would like to bring greetings at this time. Clubs in Division 25. We'll move to 24, Division 24. Division 23 West. 23 East. Or own division in 23 Central.
Harry.
Hey. How are you?
I am well, thank you. I am excited about the discussion. This is P.E. Joan Felix Bennett from the Kiwanis Club of Nation Builders, Kingston. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to this discussion this evening.
Happy to have you as well. And
currently,
I'm sure
I'm by myself, but I'm awaiting more of our members to join.
Yes, and thank you for coming. And I do believe that we all will enjoy this discussion tonight. Yes. Division 23 Central, any other?
Good evening, P.E. Junior. How are you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yes.
Sorry about my phone. Somebody decided to call me at the most inopportune time. I apologize.
It happens.
Okay, so as you know, I am PE the Eurydice from the Kiwanis Club of 23 Central Surrey Online. And at this moment, I am alone. Well, I see LGD Desmond. So I'm going to borrow him, and it's going to be two of us for now. But I'm sure the number will increase as the night goes on. So thank you so much for inviting us. And I'm looking forward to this spirited discussion, to learning and observing and understanding. Thank you so much.
We are. And thank you for coming as usual.
You're most welcome, Pete.
Okay. Division 23 Central.
Yes, P.E. Junior. Good evening to you. Good evening to you, fellow Kiwanians. PD Derek here from the Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew, bringing greetings on behalf of the president and the club members. Last check, I saw 2 of us here now, but I'm sure others will join. So as well, preparing myself for a wonderful spirited discussion, and I'm looking forward to and wishing you a great meeting. Thank you.
And thank you for coming as well.
My pleasure.
Right. Division 23C, Central. If not, we'll move to our SLPs. Are there any SLPs online now that would like to bring greetings at this time? SLPs online?
Good evening, everyone. I'm the past Vice President of the Delhi Technical High School Key Club. Here with me is my FA, Albert Douglas, and we're looking forward for more members. And we're thankful for the invitation, and we're looking forward for the discussion on the topic. I am looking forward because it seems interesting. So thank you for inviting us.
It is. And thank you for coming as well. All right. Any other SLP group that would like to bring greetings at this time?
Hi, good evening. President Kino here from Michael CKI.
Okay.
Currently, there are 2 other members. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 other members with me here, and I'm looking forward to others joining me momentarily. And I'm looking forward to a very engaging discussion this evening. This is something that I'm actually looking forward to. So have a good evening.
Good to know, and thank you for coming. SLP groups, any other? Anybody else online that would like to bring greetings at this time?
This is Dr. Horace Alexander. I hail you from Loma Linda, California, but I'm from Christiana, originally from Christiana. Just glad for the opportunity to listen in on the discussion today. Thank you.
And thank you for coming. Anybody else that would like to bring greetings? And
evening, Junior. I have 2 guests and potentially prospective members to greet this evening. One, Dr. Hendrik Watson from Barbados, a colleague of mine, a co-worker from the University Hospital of the West Indies. Here, first meeting. And also Dr. Andy Jean-Baptiste, one of the doctors actually who assisted very recently in the very last minute with the health fair that we shared with CyberConnect. Also here for his first meeting, also a medical colleague.
Thank you all doctors for coming. Any other that would like to bring greetings at this time? If not, President Paul, I'll hand back over to you, because I know I need all the time to have this discussion this evening. President Paul?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, PD Junior.
Yes.
And I want to also, I see a few Kiwanis that I haven't seen in a long while. I see DP Arturo. Welcome, DP Arturo. Good to see you online this evening.
Thank you very much, President Paul. Very happy to be here with you all.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. And also I see F.A. Aldit, that's always with us, our faculty advisor from Dunum Park Technical. Good evening, F.A. Aldit. At this time, we'll move on to recognition of birthdays and anniversaries. And I'll call on President-elect Designate Newton at this time. If not, may I invite anyone here celebrating birthday or anniversary or any special occasion that you wish to share with us. If so, you may go right ahead and we'll celebrate with you at this moment. Anyone on this call? Well, if not, we'll move on to our Kiwanis education segment, and I'll call on LGED Desmond.
Thank you. Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone, fellow Kiwanians and guests, SLPs, love to have you. The topic is the origin of Kiwanis for Disability Day, and the conceptualizer we have as Pamela Rodney White, Lieutenant Governor, Distinguished Lieutenant Governor of Excellence, and actually now Vice Governor Designate. And this was really conceptualized during her administrative year of 2018-2019. In 2018-19, the then Lieutenant Governor Pamela Rodney White took a decision to focus on persons with disability, a passion that she had developed for persons in this demographic. Initially, her idea was to have a day observed by Division 23 East to increase awareness of and lobby for people to support these individuals. She then broadened the scope to an island-wide focus, but would be better done through the Kiwanis Foundation of Jamaica. As all clubs island-wide are members of the Kiwanis Foundation of Jamaica, she got buy-in from all lieutenant governors, and a resolution was put forward and adopted at the annual general meeting of the Kiwanis Foundation of Jamaica, of course, in 2018-2019. LG Pam then prepared and submitted a proclamation to the Governor General of Jamaica, Sir Patrick Allen, who declared September 12 as Kiwanis for Disability Day. This presented a unique opportunity for public education, engagement, and service for persons with disabilities. It also allowed the Kiwanis movement in Jamaica to be well poised in doing its part in achieving the government's vision 2030 rather, of inclusiveness. The objective was, and still is, for the Kiwanis movement to sensitize the public of the needs, challenges, and skills of persons with disabilities. In this year, 2018-19, only 3 clubs participated in the observance of Kiwanis for Disability Day. Since then, partnerships grew with corporate and other non-government organizations, but most notably with STRIDE, and STRIDE is strengthening responses to dementia in developing countries. This year, the focus is on education, strengthened by a grant of $2,500 US from an anonymous donor. And this was made at a meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Eastern St. Andrew after a moving presentation by Senator Floyd Morris, who is rapporteur for the Caribbean for persons with disabilities. Each club across all divisions is encouraged to participate by completing projects or speaking engagements which focus on persons with disabilities. President Paul, that's it for Kiwanis education. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, LGED Desmond, for that insightful segment on Kiwanis education. We'll move on to our main event at this time, and I'm going to call on our moderator, DP Stewart, to take charge of this segment. DP Stewart.
Okay, President Paul, I just want to check. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing it clearly.
Okay.
And also seeing you.
Yes. I wanted to use a laptop so that I could be seen, since, you know, I think it would be more appropriate based on the role I'm playing. But I wanted to make sure the mic was working. Fellow Kiwanians and guests, it is indeed a pleasure to have you all here this evening. We are really, if you saw the flyer, you know exactly what we're going to talk about. And I just have a few opening remarks because, you know, there's an obvious fascination in Jamaica about the monarchy. I think we can all agree. And it isn't just because we have retained, you know, the Queen, now the King, as our head of state, because even countries that fought against the British, like the United States and our republics, also have a fascination with the monarchy. And it is interesting, you know, somebody made this point, and I think I would bring it up, is that even in our music, you know, when Tarrus Riley sang about she's royal, it was seen as the ultimate compliment. Now, obviously, it was seen as the ultimate compliment because we think, you know, positively about royalty. Otherwise, you know, saying she's royal wouldn't mean anything. But that is just part of the story. And although it is pretty clear that our government, and I think both parties agree that we are heading towards a Republican status, which we just wanted to explore, to what extent are Jamaicans really ready to, you know, give up this monarchy thing? And what kind of impact, you know, what does it really mean? So I won't get much further into it. More points will come up, but I want to introduce our panel. And I'm hoping that all our panelists will have their video open so that we can all see you. And let me introduce them. We have DP Chris Robinson, needs no introduction. We have Director Warren McDonald, also needing no introduction. We have DP Marcel Boyce, also no introduction. Maybe some of you may not know the fourth member of our panel, Kiwanian Andre Palmer, who is relatively new, but who has already made his mark in terms of, you know, presentations that he has done to the club. And I particularly wanted a member on the panel who was, let's say, of a younger age group, let's put it that way, to give a perspective that some of the others may not have. So we have these four gentlemen with us, and I also want to assure the audience that at the end of the main focus of when our panelists have had a chance to say what they have to say, we are going to let the members from the floor also, you know, put in their 2 cents. So with that in mind, and without any further ado, and I didn't tell them who I was gonna call on first, but I'm gonna kind of follow how the flyer was set up. And I'm gonna call on DP Chris to share his views. I remember we're talking about the topic, which is how Jamaicans feel, but we're also expecting to hear how our panelists feel. So DP Chris, over to you.
Thank you, DP Stewart, fellow Kiwanians and visitors. Good evening. When DP Stewart asked me to, you know, be a part of this panel, you know, to discuss are Jamaicans really over the monarchy, you know, I began thinking, what are we talking about? Are Jamaicans over the monarch, or are Jamaicans over the system of monarchy? Because I think in this particular case, you know, we need to look at the difference, because one is looking at the individual who occupied the position of monarch, and the whole system of monarchy. Now, person will say, well, you really can't divide the two, you know, because that the individual represents what all that system and institution of monarchy deals with. But in thinking about it, one really ought to try and look at the thing in that way. Look at the individual as opposed to the system. Because one of the challenges that we face is that, as you had mentioned, DP Stewart, the two political parties are agreed we should get rid of this monarchical system. But none of the two parties have had the fortitude of pushing and getting it done. And you know why? It's because of that difference between the individual and the system. The point is, many Jamaicans admire the individual, but they hate the system. And none of the two parties, I am putting it to you, are brave enough to say, well, we're getting rid of the Queen, we're getting rid of Mrs. Queen, because they recognize, and politics is all about popular support, and they recognize there may be individual pushback if the argument is framed in terms of the individual and not the system. But having said that, when we think of our Jamaicans over this whole system, we probably need to read in terms of not just Jamaica, but other things which are happening. Because when we think of the monarchy, we're thinking of, and I saw a nice quote which says, an anachronistic relic of the feudal society we used to inhabit. Or we can also think of it as a benign connection to tradition and the country's past. Those are nice things which are said, but the point is, when we think of the monarchy and monarchs, worldwide, there are only 29 monarchs in the world. Only 29 across 3 countries. And across these countries, how they operate and their mechanism for political power operate differently. Ranging from the absolute monarch, where the sovereign possesses supreme authority, to the situation that we tend to know about in outside of the world, where the king or the queen had a largely ceremonial role in our operations. But having said that, right, only 37 or so monarchs worldwide, or 29 monarchs worldwide. And these 29 monarchs, they operate in not many countries. And indeed, when you think about it, one monarch is head of about 16 countries. So most of them are just one country, the country where they live, and it's the country where they rule. But this particular one monarch, influence many other countries. Now, having said that, you might say, well, if monarchy is some old system, why people don't get rid of it? And what we find is that acceptance of the monarchy as a system is in many ways a function of who is ruling at the time. And what we find, and I'm certainly find, and I think it applies to Jamaica, is that the person who was the monarch, who was the head of the Jamaican establishment, is a person who is liked by many of the residents. And I think that is the point I was making before. Why none of the two political parties, even though in principle they are agreed that we should move forward, none of them wants to move forward on their own because they fear the backlash which can happen. And what else can we find? I would say there was a study done by, there was a study which was done by Standards and Poor, and we know Standards and Poor, they issue, things about country's economy and all of those things. And it was suggested that countries with a monarchy, on average, fare better than countries without one. And we might say, what is that? That is strange. Right? In fact, there are studies, and it was a dated study. It was done in 2015, right? Their studies was that countries with a monarchy have an average credit rating, economics they are speaking about, of A- compared with countries that don't have a monarchy. And they were comparing similar type of countries. And so how they compare Jamaica against how they compare Haiti and things like that. But it is interesting that is also what's brought up as to why people are hesitant to get rid of the system. And also what we found and what another study found, do I have this here? Right? Yes, another study found that the countries that do have the monarchy in place, that they did a survey, and it was found that 37% of persons maximum wished to abolish the monarchy. So they did a survey among various countries that had the monarchy in place. And what they found is that 37% at the highest level of the respondents wished for it to go away. Now 37, that's not even half. That's, broadly speaking, somewhere near 1 in 3. Now, that's a very telling story, because many of us, who haven't gone through, we studied a little at history, we studied about our ancestors, and we studied about what took place, certainly in our country, and the monarchy and its role in all of this. Would still say, but certainly that can't apply. But again, I go back to the very first point I made, that one of the reasons that it has not been pushed by either party and want to go on their own and do it is that less than half of the persons they think, and I'm sure that they have also done their own private survey and have seen where the majority don't want to get rid of the monarchy. But I don't think it's that they don't want to get rid of the monarchy as a system. I think it's just that they have a certain admiration for the individual. That's why I was making the initial point of separating the individual from the system. Because I think what has happened is that there is a certain level of admiration for the individual who was on the throne for the last 70 years. Now, that system, and I put to you, would have changed dramatically since last week. And those sentiments, I think, would have changed dramatically since last week. Right? And I'm sure that if a survey was done now, that 30% or so will move easily above 50%. And that being the case, I can quite clearly see that making that bold step will happen. you know, and so the what was being
Chris,
used as excuses, you know, that you know, we have to have a referendum and all of these things before, you know, and to me it was excuses why we didn't make the change. I think once the politicians are satisfied that the majority of Jamaicans no longer view or have any sentimental feelings towards the new incumbent, you'll find that the pace towards becoming a republic, to no longer have the monarch as the head of state, will move up. So are Jamaicans over the monarchy? Again, given what has happened since last week, I am prepared to say that yes, you'll find now that more than half of the population will want us to abolish the monarchy in Jamaica.
Okay.
I will leave that as my opening salvo.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I should have set some guidelines at the beginning though, and I just so that because I want us to all have our opening statements and then we mix it up a bit. So I'm going now. I would have said 5 minutes for everybody, but you went a little bit beyond that. So let me say 6 minutes for the remaining members, and I'm going to call on Director Warren as the next person. Director Warren.
Director Warren is muted. Unmute, Director. You're still muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, DP Stewart. President, fellow Kiwanians, the topic this evening, are Jamaicans really over monarchy? This has been a very topical question. In fact, if you turn to the news, all you get, especially from the stations of the North, is the death of the Queen, you know. But naturally, we're getting it from the perspective of England, which is not the same. I mean, they look on their Queen, and I think she did an excellent job as Queen of England, but not so for the Commonwealth, as it were. There are 193 countries that are listed in the United Nations. And of these 193 countries, only 22 have never been invaded by Britain, right? So the British Empire virtually controlled 90% of the world at some stage. Today, we only have 56 Commonwealth countries, and of these, only 14 has the English monarch as head of state. And of course, Jamaica is still one of the 14. The question may be asked, why so, you know? But before I go there, as Chris mentioned, I think there has been general consensus now. From the days of Michael Manley in the 70s, you know, it has been postulated that we should become a republic. And this has been followed by all the prime ministers since then. Most recently, the former Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson, in giving up his privy councilship, or whatever you want to call it, acknowledged that there has been consensus now between both parties, and that it was his hope that by the end of this year, we would have moved towards, at least significantly towards that achievement. The Prime Minister, in the recent visit that now Prince of Wales, told him that Jamaica was going to move on and that we were looking to becoming a republic. So there's no doubt that both parties are in agreement on the way forward. There was a survey done in Jamaica in particular in August of last year. This was before the death of the Queen, of course, which showed that 56% of Jamaicans wanted to get rid of the monarchy. So I think there's general consensus between the parties and a majority of the population, even before the death of the Queen. And I think that percentage would have increased on the death of the Queen, you know. The aspect of whether, Chris said whether it was a monarchy or the person, there is a differential undoubtedly, but I think people, the Queen, the impression is that the Queen has nothing to do with what is going on in the operations of even in England, but that's not so. Because every week the Prime Minister has to give the head of state or the Queen or the King as it is now, a briefing on what is happening or what the government plans to do and so on. And although publicly the monarch never gives an opinion, I think the opinion would have been given to the Prime Minister. So there is some linkage there. And the Queen, people will look on her and, you know, with some affinity, some love, but she represents a family that, and there are several quotes, you know, but from South Africans and all different people, but there was a quote here which I'd love to read. Oh yes, the Cornell University professor, Mintun Wigugu. He quoted to say that the legacy of colonial violence and plunder, a legacy of racial segregation and institutional racism. That's how he defined the Queen. You know, coming from her family. The South African Julius Malema, he is one of the leaders of the opposition parties in South Africa. He says her legacy is colonialism, slavery, racism, loot, and plundering. So these are some of the views of former colonies of the United Kingdom. We may say, I mean, why would we want to change? Why should we worry about it? But I think 60 years after independence, at least political independence, I think it is incumbent on us that the head of state be a Jamaican citizen. As Cliff Hughes said in an interview, he said, boy, he has a daughter and he's 20 odd, and why can't she look to one day aspire to be head of state? Why we have to look overseas to some, to quote him, white man or white woman, you know? So I think the time has come for us to move ahead and follow several other countries, even in the Caribbean. Trinidad is a republic. Barbados recently turned republic. And as I said earlier, it's only 14 countries that still celebrates the head of state being the king or the queen of England. I think one of the problems with moving ahead is politics. I think the Constitution requires 2/3 majority, a referendum, and the Jamaicans, especially the politicians, have in the back of their mind the referendum for federation, you know. And what transpired after that vote, as you recall, Norman Manley lost the general election shortly after. So I think that was the reason for some caution. But now that we have both parties, there's consensus among the parties and the majority of the people, I can see no reason why we can't move ahead with some haste, you know. I don't see any downsides to it. And when we look at the monarch and the performance, the slavery, you know, I don't want to go much into it, but the Royal African, whatever the name of the company, transported over 3 million slaves across the Atlantic, and hundreds of thousands died on the journey, you know. They've made a mint of money of slavery. If you look, they have 300 residencies. They have 27,000 masterpieces. They have a fleet of Bentleys and Rolls Royces. They said that 50% of the UK coastline is owned by the royal family. You know, Regent Street, racehorses. It is said that there's a carriage with tons of gold. I don't know how true that is, but they said that that is worth billions of dollars in today's money.
Yeah.
You know, the wealth that the royal family garnered from exploiting colonies is unforgivable. And the Queen has never acknowledged, she has never apologized for slavery or for any wrongdoing. You know, the no king, he acknowledged it, that slavery was an atrocity, but he has never apologized, you know. So we need an apology, and we need some reparations, but I won't touch that tonight. You know.
Okay, is that it, Warren, for your opening?
All right, I will leave it there.
Okay.
I don't want to go into the rebellions in Kenya and Yemen and so on, you know.
Well, there'll be other opportunities to get back in and mix it up. But for your opening, that is fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna now call on our youngest member, and that's Kiwani and Andre Palmer, to give us his opening comments. Andre, over to you.
Thank you, DP Stewart. And good evening, fellow Kiwanians. So youngest maybe in terms of the length of time that I've been a member of Kiwanis, but certainly maybe not youngest in age, right? So let's just make that distinction. Yeah, so this is certainly an interesting conversation and an interesting time to be having this conversation. And let me just preface what I'm about to say by saying that, you know, we've just witnessed the death of what many consider to be an incredible servant of the people, having served for 70 years with great distinction. So this is in no way at all an indictment on the person who occupied the office, who just passed, you know, Queen Elizabeth II, nor is it an indictment on, you know, the incoming king, the new king, King Charles. But it is really more about, in my mind, a question of whether or not Jamaicans are ready to remove the monarch or the monarchy as the head of state. And that's kind of really what it comes down to. And I believe, well, both DP Chris and Director Warren spoke about the fact that, you know, successive governments have brought this proposal to Parliament. They've talked about it on election platforms. They've talked about it openly. And they have really brought this because they genuinely believe that this is the will of the Jamaican people. They want to have an open and honest conversation about whether or not we retain the monarch as the head of state, and I believe that was settled. So the same poll that Director Warren referenced earlier that was done last year, over 50% of Jamaicans actually said yes, they want to remove the monarch. At the time it was the Queen as head of state. Even though I believe that there was great affection towards the Queen, simply because most of us grew up with her as, you know, a grandmotherly figure at the helm of the royal family, and she's been a part of our lives for, I mean, you know, forever essentially. But a lot has changed. Now, a couple of interesting things to note. So one, the median age of, I mean, we're almost what, a population of 3 million, and the median age right now of Jamaicans is 31. Well, it's 30.7, but so let's say 31. And why is that contextually important? It is important because for right now we have the most educated population we've ever had, with a large majority of people under the age of 30 having completed high school, and many have gone on to complete a university degree. So now they question everything, and there's a conversation about why is this thing happening, and what is the benefit to me as an individual, and what is the collective benefit to us as Jamaicans. And a lot of them make the argument that if they want to visit the United Kingdom, they have to apply for a visa, and the visa is not cheap at all. And there is no guarantee that you'll be issued that visa. So on the question of what is in it for me, you know, there seems to be very little. The question around what is in it for us collectively as a nation also comes up with very little in the way of answer. So there is no preferential trade arrangement between the United Kingdom and Jamaica. There is no preferential bilateral arrangement that gives us, you know, a different kind of treatment over another by virtue of us having the monarch as the head of state. So when the educated, or what someone referred to as the articulate minority, question what's in it for me and what's in it for us, the answer is very little. Another substantial point to note around the youthful population is right now we have access to a vast amount of information and technology. So access to information is actually quite prevalent. And there is a sense of global interconnectedness that has been brought about through social media. And also that has created, and probably most importantly, this increased visibility and participation in conversations about race and race consciousness. And that kind of played out on this global stage, you know, through the conversations around Black Lives Matter. So I say all of that to say that a lot of the conversation is now being driven by the median age of Jamaicans, the under 31s, who really believe that it is time to have a head of state that reflects the majority of the people and who comes from the country that they represent. So this idea of having a Caucasian head of state that was born in a different country and who only occupies that position by virtue of being born in a lineage, you know, steeped in tradition and history, a lot of people have moved away from that general thinking. So, and that actually comes to the idea of independence. And over the last couple of years, we've been having a lot of conversations leading up to Jamaica 60 about what it means to be truly independent. And a lot of people feel that we've never, or we can never attain true independence if we do not have our own head of state. And Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Dominica, you know, they took that move in the 70s, and most recently, Barbados, you know, took that move and removed the monarch as the head of state. And I think we had the clearest indication earlier this year when we had the visit of the royals, when our prime minister said, you know, I mean, it's time to move on. And I thought that was the clearest signal that was ever given, that to indicate that Jamaica is in fact really over the monarchy. And he then went a step further. So we've seen a lot of prime ministers make that utterance. Yes, we're going to take the steps necessary, but we understand that there needs to be some amount of constitutional reform to make that happen. And the Prime Minister has gone a step further by creating a ministry responsible for taking the steps necessary to create a constitutional reform that will result in that movement taking place. So I will end by saying the answer to the question is an overwhelming yes. And a lot of the conversation right now is being driven by what some would refer to as the articulate minority, who have a very different view from a lot of older Jamaicans who feel some kind of allegiance to the crown and the kind of system that they would have grown up on.
Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you for that nice package in terms of the areas you've covered. And to give our fourth member of the panel his opportunity to put in the first 2 cents before we start to mix it up, I'm going to call her DP Marcel. Marcel, over to you.
Thank you, DP. Sure. Let me start by saying that
no, Marcel.
Since Andre didn't want to acknowledge he's the youngest of the panel. And that's all right. So I will take that. I take that. Okay, thank you very, very much.
No problem at all. No problem at all, DP.
Listen, let me start by saying, when I look at the topic, right, our Jamaicans over the monarchy. Let me tell you what I did, because let me go straight to the topic. What I did since this thing came up, right? I did a crude done analysis survey, because that's what we're talking about. Our Jamaicans really over the monarchy. And I spoke to, this was now scientific together, right? I spoke to about 15 persons. 15 persons. About our Jamaicans really over the monarchy. And it's ranged from housekeepers to the gas station attendant, one at the supermarket and so on. Right? And of the 15 persons, right, I can tell you, 12 are scientific. So, okay, I'll give you the percentages plus our writers out there, but 12 out of the 15 were on for getting rid of this monarchical system that we have. And quite a few of them, I must tell you, I spoke to, didn't really see much in terms of the monarchy. They talk about the queen. So let me go further in saying that. But I agree with what I said earlier on, is that there was a emotional attachment, I call it, for many of us, 70 years, and most of us grew up, probably all of us here, right, with the queen as our head of state. And for me personally, I always thought it was almost wrong. In fact, I say ridiculous to have a head of state for a country that claims its independence, right? And she lives in a country where you have to take a visa to go to. Obviously, something is wrong with that. And when Jamaicans think about that, they have long time. It's 56%, not just now, 56%. Donald support, I think it was a year or 2 years ago. 56% is fairly high of those who said they're over the monarchy. So I agree with what I said earlier on, with the passing now of the queen and out of respect, because I have some challenges with the queen and her having had this, esteemed 70-year reign. But leave that for now, because when somebody dies and she's a mother and a grandmother and has family and friends, I don't think it's the time to go into this. So we're talking about the monarchy. And a lot of people, let me say this, it's not just no Jamaicans, we're over the monarchy. What is not known, it was 60 years ago, there was when Alexander Bustamante and Norman Manley were the ones who championed the whole thing of independence. When they sought for us to have independence, there was the desire on the part of the leaders then, on behalf of the people of Jamaica, to have our own head of state. It was Buckingham Palace, and listen carefully, please. it was Buckingham Palace who insisted, so I am told, and the history records are there, that we maintain the head of, well, Queen at the time, the head of Buckingham Palace, as the head of state of Jamaica. So from then, it was the desire of Jamaica, through their leaders, to have our own head of state. And we have sat with that. Earlier on, it was said that, you know, the political parties, listen, they have been saying that for years. And let me tell you how I see it. Because I just think about this for a minute. The majority of persons are with it. There's nothing to lose. It's not like what happened with Norman Manley and the Federation. There's a vote against it, and he felt, you know, inclined to call an election. That would not happen here. The political will is not there because there's no politicians operating, in my view. It's all about what gets votes. There's no votes to be gained if there's no, this thing of the monarchy and getting rid of the queen, not vote cashing. It's not going to win them any votes or maybe lose any votes of any significance. So that political will, that desire, it wasn't pushed. This thing has been said from Michael Manley, yes. Lady Portia Simpson came along, PJ Patson came along, and everybody has said it. But as the song says, action and not a Bagamosa, as it said, the action was not taken because it wasn't necessary. It was not a, as I said, vote-winning exercise. So to go to the point of whether Jamaicans are over the monarchy, they have been, for me, and what I have discovered with that survey that I did, as cool as it was, there was some attachment at different levels to Queen Elizabeth, yes, because you know the country has grown up with her. She was a lady, at times a charming, you know, lady, and she was accommodated, tolerated by some. But with that change now, the persons that I spoke with and the polls I think will show, and if you listen to you, the commentaries on the radio, they are saying time now to really make the change which we have always wanted to. When I point out to persons in the survey, some of you don't know this, that our Governor General, right, who sits at King's House, I understand how the British operate with. They insisted that we maintain the, you know, the Queen as head of state, and that Queen must reside at King's House. The whole colonial thing must remain. And by the way, when the Queen visits Jamaica, she goes to dinner at the King's House, but she sleeps on the royal yacht Botanica, I think it is called, right? Because you know she is separate and apart from her subjects, and that's what it is all about. You know, we have retained and remained slavishly the loyal subjects to this foreign head of state. And here we have our Governor General representing that foreign head of state. And I made a discovery that blew me away. The Governor General is at King's House. The budget, and when I told persons this, I deliberately told them after they told me their position. The budget for the maintaining of the representative of the Queen is $408 million. Jamaica spent over $400 million every year, and last year it was $460 million, to maintain the representative of the Queen. Now, when we think about things like that, is it time to get over the monarchy? You may argue that we'll still retain some kind of head of state with some cost. But I have a different view on that also. I don't think we need to have a ceremonial head of state, but that's a different discussion. But when you put all that together, the views of the people, the sentiments of the people, the history behind it, that we have a head of state in a foreign country that we did a visa to go, and when you go there, you can't see her anyway, at Buckingham Palace, then our Jamaicans over the monarchy, they have been for a long time. Are Jamaicans now ready for the formal and official thing to be done? Yes, 56% were saying so before the death of the emotional connection. So that's in a nutshell. to stick with the moves that we are talking about, as Jamaicans over the monarchy, a resounding yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Marcel. All right, I want to throw a couple of things into the mix. I read a couple of things on social media, and these are also observations that I've made, over the years that I want to just bring up. Have you ever noticed how somebody who attended the Queen's School speaks about how to pronounce and how to address the name of the school? There's obviously an element of pride because they don't say Queen's School. You have to say the Queen's, I can't remember how they actually put it, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So that is something that makes me also remember just how people think about the monarchy and more particularly the Queen. There's also the issue of, I also read recently where Lorna Goodison, who in 2020, she was given the Queen's Medal for poetry. Now I'm sure she's a conscious Black woman. We know, we don't have to know her personally, but I'm sure she is. And yet she said, because she wrote an article, that when it was announced, she sat down and wept. And she was really sorry that her mother, who she remembers made her go to King Street when she was in two minds, I think back in 1953 or whenever it was, to watch the Queen. And she wasn't around to witness this. Obviously a very proud moment for her. And she was received by the Queen at Buckingham Palace and had a conversation. So there are these memories that individuals have had which stand out. But I want to now lean to something that Andre brought up about the benefits. And the corollary to that is there are costs also of being a republic. There are costs. If it's even the document, I was reading where the Jamaica Defense Force, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, a lot of things with insignias, they have to be changed. And I also asked the question, and all of these, I want you guys to just jump in and pick up on this. This is the last point I'm gonna make. Is what is it? Can we think of anything that our government, because these are some of the arguments that people use, was not able to do? As a government, we were not able to do it because we were not a republic. All right. Anybody wants to jump in at any of those points? We'd like to hear some views.
Maybe Stuart.
Yes.
Let me jump in and people have a certain perception of me, and I know that's what it is, and I live with it. I too grew up in an era when, as a youngster, without any choice, I was forced to go out on the streets in the boiling sun to wave a little flag to welcome a lady who had nothing that looked like me. But I had no choice. And this was part of the schooling and that we were brought up in. But I have gotten beyond that. And I reached a point now where I have made my own decision. And I think that there is no relevance of the monarchy to what we aspire to be as Jamaicans. And I hear people talk about people expressing their views and prime ministers saying this time to go and what have you. And yet we still have persons accepting privy council appointments and what have you. So you have to question the purpose and the genuineness of persons who make these expressions. Because to me, the time to move away from the monarchy has long passed. We should not even been anywhere close to that now.
Yeah.
And I know that the Queen, I was told, a nice lady. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems so. But her being a nice lady and a decent lady is not what it's all about. It's about the relevancy of the monarchy and what they have subjected us to as a people, as a nation, what they have gained.
Exactly.
On the back of our persons. And that is where I want the discussion to go. And that is what will instruct us as to whether they are relevant or they should still be around. I say no, 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 no.
Let me just come in here a minute, DP Stewart, on something that DP Marcel said. He indicated that one of the reasons why he believed nothing had to be done was because there was nothing to gain by moving away from the monarchy.
Politically.
Right? But I put it to you, Marcel, that the reason none of the two parties moved was that both fear in their mind that they could lose. And even though there was a general consensus between them about doing this, they, I don't think, felt comfortable enough in the wider population to move on their own for something like this. And that is why I still believe that nothing has been done up to this point in time more than lip service towards going the constitutional route of changing the monarch as the head of state. Now, I think the majority and both parties will feel comfortable that the majority of Jamaicans would accept the movement away. And maybe now is the time. But none of the two of them were prepared to do it before.
You could be right.
Because remember, it's politics we're talking about.
Yeah, you could be right.
And if you're not sure about your base and what might happen, you're not going to move. And none of the two parties were brave enough to
I don't think
go
it's a lack of, no, you might be right, but I think it's a trust factor. Because if you had consensus and you have the two parties saying the same thing, right? Then there should not be any political loss. I think where there was I'll go with you on this. I think where there might have been a challenge was the trust factor, where they may sit down at the table, as we have seen, because they can come together on crime and violence, right? And the only thing that has worked is when the economic thing was pulled from them and when the electoral thing was pulled from them and independent people did it. But that's a different discussion. So I think there's a trust factor there, because if they had consensus at the table going forward into the election, and then one made, change course, change the argument, and gain politically, then that could have been the problem there, which was more a trust factor, which is the thing between them. Who, as PJ Patterson said, two contending forces continuously at war with each other, right? So I give it that, I give it that.
Yes.
But we agree that at this point,
there's
nothing different.
Yes. And past E.T. Boston also made a very important point regarding the idea that the Queen, how should I put this now? Okay, the point is, for us to move forward, both parties will have to agree on certain things and the wider society, because past DT had indicated that many of the bright people in the society were still looking forward, and our lawyers were still looking forward to being named Queen Counsel and all of that. So even some of those who were advocating and giving talking about moving away, they were still hoping to be named a Queen's Counsel.
Oh yes.
Now, when we move away from that now, what are we going to have? The Governor General's Council?
No, there's been a suggestion. No, they call it state. There has been a suggestion.
You see, it was being talked about in it, what is in it? Why some people may have called. So you might find that there are people who will give voice to the idea.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Deep within, they want the thing to continue.
You're right.
But some persons...
Maybe, that is one of the influences to what's working.
You're right.
But some persons sent it back and say, I don't want it no more.
When it died? 2 months ago? 3 months ago?
No.
April.
Michael Manley sent it back and said, I don't want it.
Yeah, 3 months ago.
That wouldn't be a QC. That wouldn't be a QC. Michael Manley wouldn't have been a QC.
No. Privy Council I'm talking about.
He's talking about PJ.
Okay.
Right?
Very small.
All right. 1 second, gents. I want to make sure that at this point, because I have a number of little issues that I also want to put on the table. But I want to also make sure that we now open a little bit more because there are some hands up in the chat.
Yes.
And I want to give the first one I see at the top of the list is DP Arturo. And he would like to say something. So Arturo, your time.
Thank you, DP Stuart. The discussions are very, very good. And I think our new member, Andre Palmer, made some very key points. But I want to reduce it to something simpler. And that is going back to the politics that Warren has spoken about and Chris has spoken about. The lack of unity between the parties on the subject matter has created a lot of disquiet and fear of losing on a referendum. If you saw the interview between with PJ Patterson and Bruce Golding, which was conducted by sometime last month concerning this whole matter, the point was made that there are still issues such as whether it should be an executive president we have, whether we should have an elected president, and who should appoint the president and how many powers he should have. Would it overshadow the prime minister? Those are issues. But PJ Patterson said, before we settle those issues, we should just move to the fact of moving away from the monarchy. The president who should then take the place should continue to conduct his position. It's very similar to the Governor General, who has been given certain powers over the recent years. And also, that topic, that referendum should deal with that topic alone. Nothing else should be put on the topic, because if you put anything else on the topic, you may get an unexpected result. And I draw your attention to the fact that recently, I believe there was an election or a referendum in the Bahamas dealing with the right of female Bahamian citizens to pass on their citizenship to their children, because I think it can only be passed now through the fathers. And it was voted against in shock. Everybody was wondering, how did you end up with such a situation? So it is important that the whole issue of moving away from the monarchy is not seen as a proposal by one of the two political parties. There has to be some unison there. And then in relation to the issues between the parties now as to how you appoint the president or what his role is, that has to be dealt with later. Because if we try to sort that out now, we'll be talking till
infinitum.
Charles passes the thing over to William or what have you. And then the discussion continues again. That is my view, and I
good point.
will allow others to.
Thank you very much. No, he's not.
No, I'm not a Queen's Counsel, and that's a minor issue, because the I mean, you have King's Council, yes, they're now changed it to King's Council. But other countries have dealt with this whole matter of the senior council by calling them SCs. Some Jamaica College supporters say you should have it Jamaica Council. And the KC guys are very in favor of the KC because it's King's Council and KC. But I won't go down there. That is a less serious topic.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Arthur. Let me also invite another person who had their hand up.
I see you already see your hand up.
Yes, that's she as I was gonna call on her. You ready? See? You could come in now. Please.
Okay. Thank you, DP Stewart. I appreciate you recognizing me. So my idea is we have two current, though not identical, but similar situations or working examples that we could look at to see that the issues are not as simple as we're done with the Queen and we walk away. Look at the problem that Brexit is causing right now. Brexit is not as old as the monarchy, as Jamaica's attachment to the monarch. But Brexit has since worn out 4 prime ministers, and they have still not achieved what they thought they would have. And the EU, it essentially kicks them out, and still they have not arrived at where they ought to be. So our second example is Barbados. Yes, Barbados is now a republic because they stepped away from the monarch. However, they retained their position in the kingdom as a part of
Commonwealth.
Pardon?
Part of the Commonwealth.
Correct. They retain their position as a part of the Commonwealth. So the issues are not simple that we just walk away and tomorrow morning we're done and we just throw away the maize and the Queen's Council, them guys throw away their wigs and we just, we're looking at serious entrenched issues that does not necessarily get resolved in one bite.
Okay, you ready to say
don't agree.
Yeah, I don't agree either. I can't.
I think she's just saying that there are other things that are part of the mix.
Yeah,
I think that's basically what she's saying.
No, I understand that. But but okay, all right, point of view.
Okay, let me just throw in something. The British have their way of doing things. And I saw an interview where an American journalist, had a British journalist or writer, they were conversing, and he decided to bring up the history of colonialism. And the British person was a bit on the defensive. And then he came up with this retort. I'm gonna read it because I wrote it down. He said the British abolished slavery 32 years before the United States and did not have to kill 600,000 people in a civil war to accomplish it. Now, I just found that an interesting retort to criticism coming from the Americans. Because if we wanted to really get broader on the topic, although that's not what the topic was about, the Americans have a lot to answer to in this whole mix of slavery and so on. Yeah. But I just thought I would throw that in because something to think about in terms of, and also the British will say, we never had slavery in England, but then that's not really anything to shout about because the plantations were in the colonies. So there was really no need for that in their homeland.
Correct. But you have a number for those who were killed before the abolition.
Well, that would have been a good retort for the American journalist, but he didn't respond in that manner. Yeah, because look, there have really been some atrocities, and you know, I was thinking that the Queen, people tend to feel a little softer about queens as compared to kings, but let's not forget something. Queen Elizabeth I, right? She was the one who really, with John Hawkins, kicked off the slave trade.
Yeah.
Then Queen Victoria, she was the one who really, you should say, kicked off the drug war, the opium wars.
Yeah.
The opiums, right? So these queens have not always been as soft and as genteel as we make them out to be. You know, and they were all benefiting from the spoils.
Exactly.
You know, and you know, so we know what happened, and then it's interesting that when Elizabeth, when her father died, and she was named as a monarch, she was actually in Kenya at the time, and while she was in Kenya, that was during the period when the Mau uprising was quite prevalent, and the British Army was really carrying out several really brutal and vicious, you know, retaliatory methods against the Kenyans. And they eventually, some of the survivors of that Mau, they actually did get some reparations, you know, when it was exposed that, you know, they tried to pass off some of these atrocities as if it was just, you know, some bad leader who went a little too far. But then it was proven that that was not the case. It was systematic, and they got reparations. Now, I wouldn't mind if we could talk a little bit about even reparations, because, you know, that's something very dear to my heart. And I think that, you know, now, you know, I heard Cliff Hughes saying that maybe because an apology would kind of open the gateway to reparations, you know, maybe that's why they don't want to say it. But anybody wants to come in on that? Andre, you have a view?
Yes, and I share the same sentiment, right? It is interesting. So when you look at how they've responded, for example, to the atrocities they believe they committed against the Irish, and when the Queen visited Northern Ireland for the first time, as you know, the first monarch, she was very clear in apologizing. And in fact, you know, the words that she used, she said, well, hindsight gives us the benefit of looking at things differently, and doing things differently, and wishing that we'd done things differently or not at all. And she apologized in very clear terms. And I think one missed opportunity of what has been for many a reign of great, of incomparable magnitude, was the opportunity that the Queen missed to, one, apologize for slavery and also talk about the role that the British played. But you are right, in apologizing for slavery and the role that they've played would be admitting culpability. And once you've put it out there, then it opens the gate. So now that you are wrong, what do you do about it? And I believe that is part of the reason that the conversation keeps coming up. So when you look at the case, when you look at apartheid in South Africa and the way that Nelson Mandela approached the reconstruction, it started with a process of truth and reconciliation. So for there to be any movement from the atrocity, there has to be first an acknowledgement that it happened and some expression of sorrow or remorse for it happening. And then you have to take the step of creating some restitution. So I think because there is this belief that once they admit their role in the slave trade, it would require some restitution. I mean, when you look at the Crown estate, it is worth, I mean, the Queen Alone's estate is valued at over 35 billion pounds. Where did that come from? They've never worked a day in their lives. Where did that come from? So the fact that they've enriched their estate by taking from the colonies and through the slave trade, and then and continue to benefit from it. And you know, I mean, those who were the victims have nothing to show, I think, is the real atrocity. And I will say that was a missed opportunity in what was otherwise you know, a fantastic reign of 70 years.
One second, Marcel. One second, Marcel. Before you come in, I'd like to ask Desmond. Could you just look at the chat for me, Desmond? I don't know if there are any things that you might see in the chat that are, you know, maybe were questions, but I can't monitor it myself right now. But I'm gonna ask you if you can look, and then just alert me if you think there's something you want to bring up. Okay, go ahead, Marcel.
Begin with though. President Paul is asking for an extension.
Oh yes, let's do that.
That was done.
Oh, that was done. Okay.
That was done. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good.
No, the thing I'll quickly say is that I don't know if I'd use it. All right, if it was a missed opportunity, it was a deliberate ignoring of going that route. So let me tell you something, you know, please, let's understand this thing. The nice, sweet, gentle, charming Queen Elizabeth is well aware of everything we are talking about here.
Yes.
Every single thing we are talking about.
Weekly briefing.
Let me tell you something. You know why I'm saying this too? And I have very little sympathy. I'll be very honest. I didn't want to go there this evening because I'm not in mourning, but I respect the fact that Lillian was saying. Not so long ago, very recent, I think it was this year, there was, it was her decision. Buckingham Palace have advisors and so on and so forth, right? And there are some guys that really run things, right? But it was some item from India that they had stolen. All the things in Buckingham Palace are stolen. The crown jewels that she's wearing is made of things.
Oh, that diamond. The biggest
Queenor.
Yes.
Yes, right.
400 million. Wow.
And there's a South African diamond as well.
Exactly.
Yes, 400 million, that one.
She had the opportunity. The people say, but let me just talk straight. I mean, it was identified, it was precious until today. One of thousands of items like that, right? And it was given to, who was it? Andrew and thing, as their gift when they were going to, you know. I'm saying that demonstrated to me that Queen Elizabeth, like all the others, well aware of the history of things,
yes,
of what has happened, the atrocities and so forth. And there was an opportunity to show some other side. And it was not a missed opportunity. I think I'm not apologize, not missed opportunity, deliberate. The British are smart, you know. This thing of
reparation.
I don't want to talk about Congress today. I go because we are part of Congress. Here we have a situation where your previous guys who dehumanize you, who brutalize you, who rob you and things. Right now they form this Commonwealth. And as Bert Samuel says, on the West there, right, into the British. And they hear the thing now. They set up the Commonwealth in all the previous colonies. And who is the head of the Commonwealth? Is that His Grace?
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
You went to reparation.
Yes, I did.
And we have to understand, a lot of people think reparation is some pie in the sky and something that don't happen.
Yes.
But there are several examples of reparation being paid. The Jews enjoyed reparation, a number of persons, you know, so we have to understand that is not something blowing in the wind. That is not achievable.
Good point.
And you know, we have to pursue as long as possible.
Yes.
That type of thing.
Here.
I remember Professor Shepherd made a statement when she spoke with us some years ago, that, you know, it's the kind of thing that you see progress, and when it happens, it will happen, but it's just a matter of time. You know, and when you look at the progress, you will just see the pace will pick up. It will happen. And we have a benchmark. You know, we know the 20 million pounds, which is worth about some 30-odd billion, that was paid to the slave owners. Now, if that was the value of their property, then that was our value.
Exactly.
I mean, there's an easy way of looking at. I mean, there are more things to it because the pain and suffering, you know, is not part of that. You know, it probably is on top of that. But at least there's a mechanism for you know, determining what the reparation should be. Okay.
DP,
yes.
You asked about anybody who may have put something in the chat. I haven't seen, except for a comment by DP Richard, but maybe you could ask for anyone who wants to comment so far. Perhaps there are those who would like to and didn't put up their hands.
Okay. The floor is open, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. If there's anyone who would like to, maybe you did a point that you go right ahead. Just, I'm not sure if I saw who it was. Who is this?
This is Mr. Gibbons. I just have a question.
Sure.
I've heard some arguments by doing some research about reparation. And one argument that I heard that kind of had my brain a little wired. Someone made the argument that it makes no sense that A pays for or apologizes for something that B did. So I want to get some comments in response to that argument. Is it a valid argument, or what do you guys think about it?
It's not a valid argument. It's not a valid argument. Because we're not talking about the individual paying. It would have to be a governmental transfer, which is basically gonna fall on the burden of everybody. But when they were paying the compensation, when Britain was paying the compensation to the owners, to the slave owners, it's the same thing. It makes no difference. It does.
There is no statutes of limitations.
And A is still A. A has not changed. It's still A.
They make the argument that A died.
Right, but herein lies the difference. So while Prince Charles, well now King Charles or Prince William may not themselves have been involved in the slave trade, they continue to benefit from the wealth that they state gathered from the slave trade.
Right.
So they are the benefactors of all of the things that have happened. So of course they have to be culpable and held accountable.
And they are aware of that.
And they are aware of it. Quite so.
Now let me ask this question. The monarchy was not the only beneficiary, but they seem to have done the most hoarding of the spoils. That's the word I was looking for. And I'm wondering to what extent the monarchy, their resources could go towards, because if some of the figures we're hearing about, even the value of that coach and so on, if you melt it down, it could come to quite a bit. Should we be putting does the Queen, my question is, does the Queen have the authority to initiate any reparations, or would it have to be the government of England, of Britain? I'm just wondering how it could work.
Very good.
Well, it's the government would pay the money, but the Queen would have certainly have some influence.
Yeah, exactly.
Over what is done.
And the way
and
in terms of where the resources should come
perhaps
from.
We'll be talking about some of the treasures that the Queen currently has.
Exactly.
Right? Also be returned.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Those people. So the Queen definitely, the monarch definitely would have to have a say in all of that.
Exactly.
Turning their thing. Yeah.
And but Stuart, you put it quite rightly, because the chief beneficiary and still benefiting is the royal family. And from I've seen that thing that Director Warren referred to. Sitting in their wealth is probably what is required without depleting their empire, because they still have an empire, right? To deal with the compensation, because the royal family, more than Britain, well, there are many who are still benefiting from it, right? But among them, the chief beneficiaries is that royal family. Extremely wealthy. So the matter of the funding of reparation, it's not an issue, it's not a problem.
Okay, we're gonna have to close. Yes. We have to bring this to a close, in certainly within the next 2 or 3 minutes. So anybody has any closing thing they want to just get in that didn't come up, here's the time. And even if it's coming from the floor, that's your time.
DP Stewart.
Yes.
Let here. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Glad you could come. We're missing you for a while.
I've been on, thank you. I've been on from Wapikil Philip, from your start, even before you started listening to your music. No,
Okay.
my thing is, retirement age is now lifted to 96.
Welcome.
A man is eligible to start his first job at 73. Now, a man has been taking breast milk for 73 years and now put into his first job. There is no way what has started from generation upon generation and come down to him is going to have any effect. It will probably have effect when the other king is crowned, that now is hearing what we are saying, because the other king to come is listening to young people and listening to the concerns of young people as a young person. But this 73-year-old new employee, nothing matters to him. So nothing will come to effect and to fruition.
Yeah, my point. I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
Nothing.
But it may not be up to him, because I think the discussion about reparations is gonna get louder and louder and louder.
Yeah.
And it's up to the government. It's up to the government. So the government has to, they cannot do anything about it. And remember, we are still under the banner, although we are celebrated 60 glorious years of independence.
And
we
remember,
are still under their banner.
And remember, a few years ago, a British Prime Minister came to Jamaica, stand up in the Parliament of Jamaica, and tell us, forget this preparation thing, move on, right? You know, we can give you a prison if you want, but
if you,
so you see where
we use the same words.
Where that is.
We use the same words recently and say we are moving on.
But in the opposite direction, no.
All right. I just want to touch on one thing that Marcel had mentioned. He mentioned about when we were talking about benefits, and he said, and continues to benefit. I just want to show something else that's for people to think about, which is how different European countries have the role they have actually performed post-colonial. Now, since we got independence, I guess the British have continued, you know, there have been investments and so on. But I don't think what they have, the relationship they have had with us as a colony compares to what, and I like to draw a parallel with France and what the relationship they have had with their ex-colonies, which they kind of call territories and so on. Because I've been hearing a lot about what has been happening in that these countries, they are forced to deposit their earnings, foreign earnings, in the central bank of France. And when they want to borrow money, which is their own money they're borrowing, they're paying, you know, market rates. No, I don't think the British have done that to us. I don't believe that has happened. But I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there, that the post-colonial era has also seen the extension of some really vicious methodologies that have continued to exploit the former colonies. And
well, that started from Haiti, you know.
Well, I want to say France pay back Haiti that money that Haiti had to pay to France. You know, but that may not be directly our immediate fight. But I want to see that happen.
You're perfectly right.
Yeah. Okay. 1 minute to go. 1 minute. Anybody in the last minute? That's all we have left.
Yeah. Well, in closing, you see, I just want to say, I probably have to have a discussion on this, is that we can look even broader at the whole thing of monarchy stroke Britain stroke inheritance. We have slavishly adopted and followed some things through the monarchy and through the British Empire and through the colonialization. For instance, the Westminster model, which was foisted up, which we adopted slavishly and said to be this fine model of it, and I have major problems with it. I think those are the things we need to look at, okay? As a real independent country. A simple thing, for instance, the Westminster model requires us to have our Minister of Finance, Chancellor of the Exchequer in Britain, right? From among the people. And that has forced, so in other words, the Minister of Finance has to be a member of Parliament. We have seen 2 instances in this country because we adopt this thing slavishly. Where in the case of Omar Davis and the current current Minister of Finance, right? The parties were forced, I say forced, and they had to find some ways of turning them into politicians and MPs, especially the current one, which they were not. And I'm just saying, in looking at the whole thing, right, these are some of the things we need to look at. The Privy Council, which at some point, probably very soon, right, the same British gonna say, you guys better start handling things yourself, but we have just slavishly kept and adopted something. The educational system was terrible, right? Yeah. And we're changing that. So in the whole scheme of getting away money,
but Marcel, as Archie has said, I think these are things that will follow.
Yeah.
We have to take step 1 first before we can.
Agree.
Yes.
Agree.
Yes. Yeah, good point to end on, because as that point that was coming out is that there are other things that need to be worked out. I also had the point about, you know, are we gonna have an elected president or appointed president? And DP Archie brought that up. So I think we have covered most of what we wanted to cover. And I want to thank our panel and our audience for the eager and willing participation. You guys have been great, and you know, those from the floor have been great. Sure. And I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for making it a good evening. Back to you, President Paul.
The conclusion, Stewie, the conclusion is that there is an overwhelming thought that we should go a certain route.
Let me tell you one thing I didn't bring up. Let me just tell you one thing I didn't. Let me just tell you one thing I didn't bring up. When I put my when I put the flyer on the different social media platforms, I got a message from a friend of mine who have never had a political discussion before, but she felt moved. The mood says, are the Jamaicans over the monarchy? And she wrote me and said, should we be? And the last thing she said at the end is, she almost was saying that we might have been better off as a colony. No, I didn't engage her.
Yes.
But I'm just saying these are thoughts that are still out there.
And I'm telling you that there is a school of thought that we were better off under the British that we were become independent.
Yes.
There's a school of thought like that.
But we have to figure it out.
Yes.
Thank you, President Paul. Back to you, President Paul.
Yes, yes. Thank you again, DP Stewart, and to the other members of the panelists and our club members for leading this discussion. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see what the next 3 years will bring. At this time, we'll move to our Sergeant at Arms, and I call on Kiwanis and Zuri.
Thank you, President Paul. And this evening, we're doing it quick and fast, so we're just moving straight to the charges. And we're starting with Kiwanis and Andre Palmer. It's been a very long time since I've seen you, my friend. This is a welcome back charge of $500.
I was here not last week, the week before.
The more you're talking, the more the charges might go up. So I would encourage you to take the charge and come back next week. All right? Kiwanian Dr. Andrew Burton for daring the Sarge, $200. And PD Junior, just because I'm running out of time, to charge you $200. Have a good evening, everyone. Back to you, President Paul.
Sarge, you're learning the work.
The PE should be 200 Canadian.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sarge. Thank you. We'll move on to notices and announcements.
One minute. I'm going to interfere in your Sarge.
No problem.
In Toronto, and him never contact anybody or not charge him.
He never contact you?
No, charge him.
Oh.
All right, we'll catch you in that next week.
Yes.
All right.
We'll move on to notices and announcement, and I call on Deirdre Willie to do so at this time.
Thank you, President Paul. Regarding notice and announcements, fellow Kiwanis, please note the changing of the guard and installation ceremony for the Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew is on Saturday, September the 17th at 6 p.m. Police Officers Club. The following day,
the 24th.
The 24th.
Sorry, 24th, is it?
Yes, Thursday.
Sorry.
Saturday the 24th.
Oh yes,
Right.
Saturday, sorry.
Sunday, following day. Sunday the 25th. Oh. It's Division 23 Central. 25th. Division 23 Central. 4th Quarter Divisional Council meeting. Details will be sent out later. Presume it starts around about 9:30. In the afternoon, changing of the guard for Division 23 West and Club joint installation has been held at the Pegasus Hotel at 2 o'clock. Please note, fellow Kiwanians, that the proposed date for installation has not yet been decided on. We're still not certain whether we're going to be a joint installation or we're going on our own. Regarding the clubbing opportunities, tomorrow, we have an invitation to attend Kiwanis Club of New Kingston's meeting at 6 o'clock, and Kiwanis Club of South St. Andrew have invited us to attend their meeting for 6:30. Those announcements for now. President Paul, you may ask if any of our visitors may have a note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Jubilee, and I'll do so. Does anyone have any announcement at this time? Any visiting club?
Yes, President Paul, the Kiwanis Club of Toronto Caribbean meets this Friday, and the link will be sent out. It will be our final meeting for the year, and we'll be having a wine and cheese.
Anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Roy.
4 years and counting.
Right.
Very lively discussion. I really enjoy. Yeah, but
good. Thanks for coming, Roy.
Okay. I'm going to enjoy the music after.
President Paul.
Yes, PDT Ross.
We just want to recognize the Kiwanis Club of Toronto for their support of the Vice Governor designate in the recent
election
convention. There was no election.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you very much, PDT Ralston, for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you, P. Ralston. We accept that on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Toronto Caribbean.
You're most welcome.
We'll now move on to the thought for the week, and I'll call on DP Stewart to do so.
Okay, I have two thoughts as usual, so that I don't get fined. The first one, it is easier to catch an escaped horse than to take back an escaped word. So let's remember that. And my second thought is this. Everybody that you fight is not your enemy, and everyone that helps you is not your friend. And that's what life has taught me. And if you want to know who the me is, that was said by Mike Tyson. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts for the week, President Paul.
Yes,
back to you.
Thank you very much, DP Stewart. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening once again. And it's always great to have our club members and visiting clubs joining us each and every Tuesday for our club meeting. I'm going to ask that we all raise up a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica Land We Love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated at 8:59 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prez. Have a good night. Good night, fellow Kiwanis.
Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Roy.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
What
Yes,
time
sir.
is it?
Yes, sir.
President Paul, I have a question for you.
Scarlett.
Yes. Yes, Ralston.
In the part of the world that you are, is white dye cheaper than black? Why do you have white beard, Paul? You're not supposed to have not white.
I'll get back to you on that one, Dennis.
Okay, all right.
Yes, DLG Willie.
I don't think he was the one who was talking to you, though. I think it went
Oh,
up
Scarlett.
Yes.
Healing you up.
Oh, I'm healed. Heal you up back. Hi, DP Chris. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
My distinguished Secretary Roy, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
The hair turning white there, Roy.
Oh, yes. It's all trying to catch up, Willie.
Yeah, Roy.
Yes.
What time is the meeting Friday?
At 7.
7, still 7, okay.
That's
Hello.
7 Canadian time, daylight saving time.
6 hour time.
6 year time, yes.
6, yes, okay.
Yep.
President Paul.
Yes, Paul.
I'm going to lunch.
Yes, no, I'm here, P.T. Ralston, yes.